had a fire and was totally destroyed. We didn't think much of it then until next year. Something happened to the place where we had it.
In Cleveland?
After,
Yeah.
in Cleveland. Flooding, I think. And the year after that, something happened to the place where we had it. Fortunately, that trend stopped. But we always got a kick out of that. I mean, it was a tragedy, but we got a kick out of the fact that we burned the place down, so to speak, with our talent show. And I think in '95 I became a lot more involved with. I started to become a lot more involved with the steering committee. Excuse me, with the
Board of
directors at the convention in Key West. And always loved that ever since my involvement with the National on the level of the Board of Directors.
Now, you were elected the next year, were you?
I was elected the next year in '96, which was in Cleveland. '96 in Cleveland, I was elected as director. But I started to become very involved with the board, and I was still maintaining the HIV committee for the board of directors for the organization. So I did attend quite a few of the meetings, because I was HIV committee chair or co-chair. And I did attend quite a few of the board meetings, though I wasn't on the board. I was a member of the committee of the board, and I was very active in that. And I did not have voting, of course, that year, but my participation greatly increased at the Key West Convention, I feel, and my desire to participate and take on a directorship or some kind of leadership role on the board. And that grew until the convention in '96 in Cleveland, when I actually ran for the board. And the Cleveland convention was one where I remember Don Moses very much, and what a wonderful person he was. And
he was co-chair of the convention.
He was co-chair of the convention. And Les and Tim, I believe, were co-chairs of the organization at the time, in '96. Les Everett and Tim West. And that was also the year that we had the very unfortunate incident where the money was stolen out of the Treasury. And that really rocked our organization, I think, because all the people on the board, of course, no one individual was responsible for letting that person get away with it. But then again, of course, it was on our watch. It was on the watch of the board at the time. And wait a minute, didn't I run for the board in Key West, or wasn't I on the board at the time we got to Cleveland? Show you how good a job I did if I can't remember when I did it. At any rate,
think so, because I don't think you ran in the years that I ran, and I ran an odd number of years.
Okay, so, but I remember that really put a damper on the convention in '96 in Cleveland, because we had just found out about it shortly before, that money was stolen out of the Treasury, and we knew who had done it, and we I don't know, can I mention his name? And we liked him, and he was popular in the organization, and yet stole money from the organization. And so people felt bad about the fact that a friend kind of did something bad behind our backs, as well as something that happened on our watch as the board. And that made it very difficult. And I remember Tim West and Les had to get up before the House of Delegates and, first of all, before the Board of Directors and explain to everyone what had happened, and then before the House of Delegates, which is the organization as a whole, and explain that money had been stolen from us.
This was money that was convention profit from the year before, was it?
Convention profit
Right.
from the
Key West.
Key West convention,
Mm.
which was around $7,000,
Mm.
stolen.
Mm.
And that was hard. That made the Cleveland convention, I don't know, kind of difficult. But what I also remember about the Cleveland convention is I shared a room with two other people that were HIV positive. One of them, so this was 96, one of them had AIDS and was quite sick during the convention. And I think passed away within a year of that convention.
Carol Lee.
Yes, Carol Lee. And I shared a room with him during that convention, and I just remember how sick he was and how hard it was for him to deal with that, being so sick, still wanting to enjoy the convention.
Mm.
But that would be a spoiler for everything, really, knowing that you're I mean, sometimes he could hardly walk. His legs were swelling from something he had AIDS related. And so impressed me always to see someone who's facing death like that so directly, and yet maintaining a real dignity, and also not wanting to totally put his health problems on you or on other people. It's kind of trying to keep his pain to himself and not make you share in his pain. I'm very impressed with that, from that convention.
Well, you got on the board then in '96 in Cleveland.
And then once I was on the board, I did nothing.
What type of projects did you get involved in?
I still kept with the HIV committee, which was a duty that not every director had. I tried to do the duties that every director had, which was sharing chapter liaisons, connections with various chapters, each director taking up 2 or more chapters to be liaisons with between that chapter and a board of directors. As well as I served on the PR committee for a time, and I also tried to keep the HIV committee going, and I also, for a time, produced a section that went into the NA Quarterly called Positive News, which was usually a page or two regarding HIV issues, especially as they related to people within the organization.
Now, was that when you had started doing your TV?
Around there, too, I was also doing a TV show here in Los Angeles called Positive News, where I would discuss HIV issues. And as a matter of fact, before the Key West convention, I was going to attempt for the NA organization to be fiscal sponsor for what I was trying to do with my TV show, which would mean that I could get donations funneled through the NA organization's nonprofit status, and then later so that I could get the money in order to produce TV shows on HIV issues, which I was already doing, but was needing some financial help in that. And I remember, too, I this is going back a little bit, but I remember too when I brought it to the board of directors, at a board of directors meeting in Key West, which was held there prior to the convention, not at the convention. And I brought this to the board of directors meeting, and I had a plan for them to be my fiscal sponsor, as they had been for the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention. Been fiscal sponsor. And it turned out it was turned down. And in retrospect, and shortly after, that was the right decision to make. But that was another instance of where I was actually very proud of the board and the way it was handled, that they told me, no, we can't do this, but we still love you. I felt very glad about that, there was a time when I was sent out of the room so the board could meet and discuss it without me in the room. And then I was brought back in, and the answer was no, which at the time, of course, I didn't want to hear. But the way I was told no, I'm very appreciative of, because I think the board went through a lot of mental anguish about whether to pursue this project or not, and didn't want to, but didn't want to alienate me or in any way, or hurt me in any way, or was very, very considerate of my feelings about this, and I always appreciated that it went down that way, you know. And I think the board made the right decision. I absolutely do think the board made the right decision. So that's good.
What was the rationale for the decision?
Well, that it was not, again, that same old argument, this is not an AIDS organization, and we don't want to be sponsoring work that has to do only with AIDS and HIV issues. And I think perhaps the board was a little bit burned by, was still stinging perhaps with what may not have been so smooth with the transition of him being fiscal sponsor for the National Task Force on AIDS Prevention. I think there was some difficulty there, and there was a little bit of fear of getting involved in such a thing again. But back to the 96 convention. Is that where we were?
Well, I think
cut
we,
for a minute.
I think we finished. All right, so we've gotten to the 1990 convention in Charlotte, where I believe you were elected treasurer of the NA for a 2-year term. Is that correct? And began a 4-year reign as treasurer.
And I believe in 97 it was quite unanimous that I was elected hands down with no competition.
Actually, as you recall, that's not correct. It was
Is
contested.
that the year that, who ran against me?
John Vivo.
That was in 97.
Yes.
Yes.
You were
Yes.
reelected without opposition.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Doug. Yes, in 1997 I ran as treasurer, and Ed Fleming was co-chair at the time. Or no, excuse me, Ed Fleming was a director at the time. And Ed Fleming, I think, really, at the time, had it in his mind that he wanted to be co-chair. And he talked to me a lot about taking care of the treasury, because Ed Fleming was an accountant. I think he had a master's in business or in accounting. And Ed Fleming, I must say, helped me very, very much in how to do the treasury. He encouraged me and the organization to get the accounting system Peachtree, and to help me do the treasury. And it was at that time, too, in '97, that we began the first year of the 5-year strategic plan. The 5-year strategic plan was developed primarily between the co-chairs Les Everett and Tim West, and of course some other people, and Alonzo Wade, the what do you call him, the executor of the
Trustee of the Michael Smith Trust.
He's the trustee of the Michael Smith Trust, and the 5-year plan began in '97, and it was a plan where, for the total of 5 years, I think it was close to $200,000 that would be used by the NABWMT from the Michael Smith Trust. And this money was allocated, split into the 5 years, different amounts for each of the 5 years. And it was also split into 7 different categories for each year, such as the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression Institute, and the Public Relations, and the National Office and Staff. In other words, there were 7 categories. This money per year was split into these 7 categories. And in order for any dollar of that money to be spent, it had to be matched by a dollar that the organization raised through their fundraising, including chapter dues, including membership, including out-and-out donations from the members. And Ed Fleming at the time was also very instrumental in beginning a fund drive that still occurs every year, where we have a co-chairs luncheon and we pass out pledge forms trying to raise money for the organization. And it's all the more critical as of the 5-year plan because, again, we receive the year's portion of the money of the 5-year plan from the trust in October 1st, the beginning of the fiscal year. From the trust, we receive it into our bank accounts, but we can't touch a dollar of it until we match it with a dollar. Can't spend any of it until we match it. Has to be 50-50. So that is why it became all the more critical for the organization to begin some of its own fundraising, because the money from the trust was only half the money that the organization could use. It had to be matched.
And to some extent, in-kind donations can be counted for matching purposes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Donations by, like, board members who pay their own transportation or things like that.
In-kind donation is when a board member pays airfare to fly to a city to attend a board meeting. That money does not go through the treasury of the NA. However, that director can submit an in-kind donation form, and the organization, that's a donation to the organization, because that person wouldn't have had to spend that money except for the organization. And a certain amount of that in-kind donation, a certain percentage, approximately a third of the in-kind donations we get, can be used to match Michael Smith Trust fund money. And the rest of the money that we match the trust with has to come out of money we raise. So this was starting right around the time my terms as treasurer started. And not so much me, but I must say Ed Fleming to a great degree helped me, helped the treasurer, and helped this organization get itself on a much better financial footing. And it was also about that time that we, Doug, do you remember when we opened the office in D.C.?
Well, we had an office in Chicago, and it moved to D.C. I think it was right at the end of Bob Williams' term as co-chair, wasn't it? Because that's when Will Brennan was hired. So that was Les and Steve were, Les and Tim were elected in '94. So I think the office had already moved to Washington then, with Will as the executive director. So I think, by the time you were elected treasurer to the board, it was already in D.C.
Mm-hmm. And so we had the office to maintain in D.C. and staff as best we could as part of our treasury. And what we also started then, and is very successful now, is the Anti-Racism, Anti-Oppression Institute. That is one of the categories within the 5-year strategic plan that gets a certain amount of money out of the trust and then is matched. And that, I think, is our best show in town at the moment for the organization, is what the Institute is doing as of '97 to now. And so my part in all of that as treasurer was, I think, pretty integral in order to keep the books accurate and in order to be able to get the money out of the Michael Smith Trust. Because our books had to be really accurate, and we had to show clearly how we were spending the money from the trust, how we were matching the money from the trust, and in order for the 5-year strategic plan to continue and the funds for the next year to come. I feel very proud, and I'm also, first of all, very grateful to Ed Fleming and as well as other people on the board for assisting me in doing the treasury, because I really had no experience other than the treasury for the local chapter. I didn't have any experience in that accounting kind of stuff. I was learning as I went. And the treasury for the local chapter, BWMTLA, was far more simple than the treasury for the NA turned out to be. And I say I'm grateful to Ed Fleming and others for helping me know how to do what I had no training in. And I'm also, again, the conceited part of me is I'm also quite proud that I was able to use some intelligence and some common sense, as well as the assistance I got, but some of my own common sense and ability to figure things out and to be able to keep the books accurate. And I think, too, that's part of the validation I spoke about before that I get from this organization, of my worth as a person, if you will. Again, doing the job as treasurer helped me get a better sense of my own self-worth. In a general sense, a gay person may not have his own family that he has created, his own children or so forth, and therefore has to get his feeling of self-worth from something else. And this is just another instance of how the NA has helped me in that regard.
Well, now you've been on the board ever since. You completed your 2 terms as treasurer this last summer. Are there any of those subsequent conventions or board meetings that you attended that stand out? Do you have any specific recollections of some of those meetings?
The meeting in Chicago, where we decided to impeach Ed Fleming, is one that really stands out in my mind. And to a lesser extent, the board meeting 3 months prior to that in Kansas City in 1990, help me. 1999,
Yeah.
where we decided to put Ed Fleming on on some kind of suspension until the board meeting in Chicago, which was to be in January of '99. The board meeting.
Since he wasn't present at the Kansas City meeting.
He wasn't present at the Kansas City meeting, and we spent a good deal of the Kansas City meeting in putting down some reasons why we were suspending Ed Fleming. And then we voted at the Chicago meeting to impeach him. I think we made the wrong decision there. At the time, I had some doubts, but more importantly than my doubts, I was swayed by the fact that there was a great deal of unanimity and a great deal of feeling from everyone on the board that this is what we needed to do to impeach him, and we needn't go into the reasons. He didn't do anything illegal. He didn't do anything immoral. I think it was basically ineptitude that caused, and he had hurt a lot of people's feelings, or he had rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so at the meeting in Chicago, we voted to impeach him, and at the time, I think I went with the board. That I put aside some doubts I had about whether we were doing the right thing or not, for the sake of the importance of the board being unanimous on this decision. Because we were also thinking that if we're unanimous on this, it's going to be accepted much more easily by the general membership, who may not know all the details of why we were doing this, but if we had the strength of unanimity, it could happen. And everyone felt it was the right decision, the right thing to do at the time, to impeach Ed Fleming. And I had my doubts at the time, and now in retrospect, I think we made a mistake, and I regret it. Because, and I feel perhaps I should have brought these issues up much more at the time, but I think I was a little afraid. I think the steam and the energy of the board and the strength of the feelings of Ed Fleming has to go that were on the board scared me a little bit, and I put aside my feelings of doubt about whether this was the right thing to do. So it happened, and I regret that, because I think perhaps I knew Ed Fleming as well as anyone, and better than a lot of people on the board, and I knew that everything he did, while rubbing people the wrong way in many instances, perhaps at times for asking money for things that he shouldn't have, I do believe that Ed's heart was always in the right place, and that he had the organization's best interest at heart. He just didn't know how to act properly on it. So I'm glad I got that out, because I don't think I've ever expressed that to anyone on the board, that I actually feel that was the wrong decision that we did. I think we did Ed wrong. I think we did Ed wrong, and I regret that.
What other recollections? Well, we're